So first and foremost,
I think the addition of pant leggings is really when you start to see your heroes get watered down.
can't even muster the ability to play straight pants that one.
Which is a good argument for absolute rulers.
Everybody is going to get behind me. They're all going to love me, and my support numbers will go through the roof.
When you hang out with the hero, it doesn't go well for you.
My grandfather took the cob and just slid it right through the bar.
Oh, God. Okay.
And that became the dominant way our family did it.
Okay.
And so, in both of my marriages, they were treated to that.
Okay, wait, hold on.
Yeah, rage haiku.
How do you imagine the rubber chicken point?
My grandmother actually vacuumed in her pearls. Oh my God, it all makes sense. We'd had the sexual revolution.
It might have just been a Canadian standoff. We're going to go back to 9/11.
Dude, get over it. Nobody understands what the Bill of Rights is supposed to be.
Agra has no business being that thick.
When the cultists win, we all lose.
This is a Geek History of Time.
Where we connect nerdery to the real world. My name is Ed Blaylock. I'm a world history teacher with one section of remedial reading right now, doing my magic over the internet, at least until the middle of April. And I have been given my marching orders to go back into the Valley of Death, the classroom. And the good news about that is that today my wife managed to get her first dose of the vaccine. So at least when I do that, I will not have to worry about bringing anything home to kill her. How about you?
I'm Damian Harmony. I'm a Latin teacher, currently up here in Northern California. Have kind of been given marching orders, but we're still bandying that about. So I assume that the abyss that I'm shouting into will suddenly turn into a billy club and hit us upside the head with 2 days warning, because that seems to be how it goes. I am feverishly looking for ways to not go back to the classroom this year, in terms of what's safest for me and my family, and also what's feasible for a father with school-aged children. So we'll see how that goes. There'll be a lot of yelling, and perhaps I will have to burn through my strike fund. So that dates this as being the beginning of March that we are recording this. So March of 2021, the year of the plague. Currently, we're at 535,000 dead from COVID. We 11 days ago just hit 500,000. To give some perspective on that, I did the math. It took us 77 days to go from one death to 35,000. So we are 7 times faster.
Yep.
Go us.
Onward and upward, baby.
Yes. Oh, there you go. See that hockey stick soar. And here's hoping my friends put me in their will. So. All right. So that's bleak as hell. Yeah.
Uplifting note.
Yeah.
So when last we left off, let's talk about something desperately frivolous for a little while, shall we?
Please.
Okay. So when we last left off, I was talking about the failings of the 3.5 Dungeons and Dragons system.
Yes.
In order to lead into where the Edition Wars, in my opinion, went from being a kind of how elite are you as a gamer, how much of a grognard are you kind of thing, into a genuine, like almost religious conflict. Because
my first question there would be, given the year that it was that happened, which is what year?
We're talking about 2007, 2008 was the development of 4th edition, the announcement of 4th edition, and the birth of Pathfinder as an alternative, and then the introduction of 4th edition in 2008.
Okay, so 2007, 2008. Do you think that the near crusade Pope, anti-Pope effort over this, do you think the
Avignon-esque,
yeah,
I love
the Avignon Hills,
at the same time.
Yeah, the Avignon Hills rules, Do you?
Well done.
Thank you.
I ain't even mad. Well done.
Do you think that happened as a product of the times in which it happened? Like, had this happened 10 years earlier, that you would have not seen such a fervent and frenetic I hate you and everything you stand for stance? Or do you think it was the age of the gamers themselves? Because at that point, gamers who had grown up on all of it, maybe they tapped out at like, I'm sick of all these changes. I still want there to be, I don't want it to be a game. I want it to be a strategy. Or do you think that there is that much of a sea change in the game that it led to this? And I recognize that I'm setting up a false trichotomy.
Well,
but I am curious.
Well, you know what's funny? I usually wind up saying, well, come see, come saw, little column A, little column B. In this case, I'm going to have to say little column A, little column B, little bit more maybe of column C. I think you have very concisely managed to kind of hit the nail on the head. With basically, I think, the three main issues that were involved.
All right. Well, so do you have anything on social media you want us? No, I'm kidding. This is the shortest episode we've ever done.
Oh my God! Yeah, no kidding.
Damian skips to the end.
You broke it down. I mean, broad strokes. You broke it down real well right there. But that doesn't tell quite enough of the story of just exactly how horrible this got.
Well, then please dig in, get your fingers dirty. Get your elbows up to your elbows into that horse's ass and yank it all out. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So first, what we've got to talk about is there were a bunch of things that designers and players all acknowledged by 2007. They all acknowledged that 3.5 had some issues.
Mm-hmm.
It was a remarkably granular kind of gaming system.
Mm-hmm.
You could break circumstances and conditions of characters and monsters down very, very, very minutely.
Mm-hmm.
Having an advantage in elevation gave you an advantage in combat.
The Jedi rule, yeah.
Yeah, yes, the Obi-Wan Kenobi rule. Having you could have a party member flanking somebody, and that gave you a particular kind of advantage, and that opened up certain kinds of attacks of opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And there were just all this myriad number of things.
Sure.
That the game did a really good job of breaking down. The guys that wrote it clearly had been possessed by the spirit of Gygax when they figured out, okay, no, man, we can break all this stuff down. We can stat this out like madmen.
Which is in and of itself interesting, because I remember playing that game, and I was in a game, and the guy running it, he's like, all right, we're going to switch over to 3.0, but it's not Dungeons and Dragons anymore. Like the switch the switch to third was this is a great system, but it's not Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm like looking at it now, it's like, it's so, because it doesn't have THAC0? Is that the only reason? Like, because it's as granular, but, well, it's not as granular, but it is, but it's like,
it's way, in a lot of ways, it's way more granular. The thing is, second edition, first and second edition, AD&D, both placed, well, and third edition to an extent, but it was even more notable in first and second edition that the idea behind this game is you go out and you kill monsters and you take their shit.
Right.
And like, I'm not saying that as any kind of judgment against it. I had a lot of fun doing that.
Yeah.
When I was, 13 through 19, and and actually beyond then. But the mechanics of the game broke down when you started having to do things like, well, okay, I want to actually like have the characters have to figure out a puzzle, or I want to turn this into a game of, and other game systems capitalized on this
right
by introducing systems in their games for social combat, where it was, okay, no, look, I'm trying to, I'm competing with this NPC to try to win this other NPC over to my point of view,
Right.
and here's a whole rule set about how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
In second edition AD&D, that didn't exist as any kind of set of rules. Now,
Right.
there's certainly something to be said for, well, role play it, and that's great. But the thing is, you get to a point where you have somebody who is playing a character who, in their head, I want to be this person who is, Obi-Wan Kenobi in the Clone Wars, the silver-tongued devil who's, incredibly persuasive and deathly charming.
Right.
But the player gets locked up when they get called on the spot in front of the whole group to role play.
Oh yeah,
I
remember having somebody at the table go, "Okay, my character has epic charisma, I don't." Like,
yeah, precisely.
Which absolutely kind of pigeonholes people into playing just martial classes.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So yeah, that absolutely was much more. In many ways, 3.0 and 3.5 answered that need because it gave you a rule set for the guy who doesn't have epic charisma and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it gave you a set of no, these are the things you can learn how to do.
Right.
Like just because you're a fighter doesn't mean you can't also be perceptive. Just because you're a fighter doesn't mean you can't also know how to play a musical instrument relatively well. Doesn't mean and you could spend skill slots on doing stuff, and that was great. This was a huge big deal for me. The second edition rules made proficiencies official, and proficiencies were introduced as part of the Wilderness and Dungeoneers survival guides in first edition, if I remember correctly, written by Doug Niles, and those were great rules, but it was still, okay, well, when we go out into the wilderness, I am proficient in, rappelling and rope use. So I have the skill. So when we need to do that, I'm going to be the one in the party who sets all that stuff up for everybody else. I'm going to make the roll. Okay, well, that's great, but that's only one skill. And you didn't gain proficiencies very often.
Right.
And it felt like a kludge, and it was, well, I'm proficient, and so since I am proficient, I make this roll, and it's a stat test. And for those of you who in our audience, the like 4 or 5 of you who've never played Dungeons and Dragons, a stat test, or the more of you who never played first or second edition, a stat test was you needed to roll a d20 under the applicable stat.
Right.
So for example, rope use was a dexterity test. So you had to roll a d20 at or under your dexterity score. So obviously, if you were the party thief, you were going to be the one everybody wanted doing the rope use stuff because you had the highest dex stat. And so, I mean, that created a mechanic, but it didn't. There was not a lot. There wasn't very much there. To kind of simplify the problem.
Yeah, it was a rule designed to adjudicate something quickly so that you could streamline your way through it, so you don't have to come up with arguments or house rule your way through how to tie knots in a piece of rope. Like 5 seconds, it takes care of it.
Yeah, make a die roll. Here we go. We're moving on. Yeah, and the thing is, that's great for things like, okay, I want to create this situation where the characters have to, overcome this wilderness challenge, and that's great. But it still doesn't give you rules for, as I said, social combat. It doesn't give you rules for turning that into an encounter or making that puzzle an extended thing that requires multiple members of the party to be doing something with it.
Right.
It's like, okay, the one guy who has the skill makes the skill roll, and we all go yay, and then we go do what we got to do. Or they fail the skill roll, and we throw dice at them because you suck. Whatever. And I have to say this now, but one of the most memorable moments of my adolescent gaming career was actually a game at a game store. One of the guys in the group said something that so offended another member of the group that he did, in fact, actually throw dice at him.
Oh, wow.
Actually, he flung from the far end of they were sitting on opposite ends of the table, long skinny table, one of them near the head, one of them near the foot of the table, and the guy that was offended flung a D4 and didn't actually hit with enough force to cause like pain,
Mm-hmm.
but he managed to get the guy, like, just tweak him right on the point between his eyebrows,
Nice.
and startled him so badly that the guy actually fell over backwards in his chair. So when I talk about throwing dice at somebody, I know what I'm talking about. I've seen it happen. But so anyway, that memory came up. I had to share it.
Sure.
'Cause I knew you'd enjoy the story. So,
Yeah.
So anyway, so third edition
Mm-hmm.
actually said, okay, look, we're gonna have skills, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I first saw the 3.0 player's handbook and I saw the way skills were gonna work, it won me over instantly. Like,
Yeah.
everything else they did, I was kind of iffy on some of the interior art,
Mm-hmm.
because some of the design choices were kind of like, this looks an awful lot like Diablo, and I'm not really a big fan of Diablo. Like,
I think you just
I don't know, man.
hit on something really good there, because 3.0 came out right around the time that broadband internet was just starting to creep into every neighborhood. People
Yes.
still had dial-up internet. I think I still did. And if I didn't, I had just switched over to, cable modem. And so a lot of people gaming on the computer was a relatively new experience. And so you're absolutely right. Like, that aesthetic shift, and I don't think it was a bad one. It's an aesthetic shift. But that aesthetic shift absolutely was a product of that time.
Oh, very much.
And
Yeah.
I remember being pleased, and kind of like, oh, isn't that kind of cool, at the amount of representation that was shown through that art. So, like, aesthetically, I totally get if it's not a style that people liked, but the fact that they were including black and brown bodies in amongst the heroes with no explanation or no, like, and this is a variant. It was just like, this is Ember.
No,
You know?
Yeah, there was no qualification. There was no
Right.
none of it. Was just, and here you go.
Yeah.
Here's our monk.
Exactly.
Paragon, as they said, the Paragon example. Here's our Paragon monk.
Right.
Is, Ember, and like, oh, okay,
Cool.
And that was a major thing.
Mm-hmm.
That as an editorial direction,
Mm-hmm.
that was very big.
Yes.
Because first edition and second edition had been really white, and I can hear members of our audience going, well, yeah, but what about, and we're gonna get to that later, because
Yeah. You're gonna need to.
we're gonna come back around to some of that in a bit. So right out the gate, the skill system was something that caught my attention in a really big way, and I was really, really happy with it. And everything else about it, I was like, okay, well, I don't know how thrilled I am about these other things, but the skill system is really great. And then the thing is, between the time the books initially came out in 2000 and 2007, over the course of that 7-year span, skills started to show that the system had some real serious limitations.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem with it was that at high levels they kind of fell apart, and at high levels they turned into proficiencies with extra parts, because the way it worked was, for example, as a fighter, you had these skills that were your class skills, and you could expand those skills at a 1-for-1 rate, spend skill points, get a rank.
Right.
All of these other things that aren't your class skills, you can learn how to do, but you're only going to get a half rank in them every time you spend a skill point, so you're not going to be as good at them. Okay, well, all right, that kind of makes sense. But then the problem that you run into is, based on the number of skill points you actually got per level, by the time you got to 12th level,
Mm-hmm.
the guidelines that the game gave dungeon masters for the difficulty of a particular task
Mm-hmm.
meant that the only person who had a good chance of succeeding at that task was somebody who had the skill at that level as a class skill and had been spending points in it the entire time.
Right.
So at first level, so if you wanted to succeed at tasks that were at encounter level
Mm-hmm.
consistently at higher levels, you basically had to pick 2 or 3 things that you were going to be good at doing.
Yeah. Let's say you wanted to disable device, because I remember that was a skill. So
Yeah.
if you want to disable device, yes, as a fighter, you absolutely could cross class. Good Lord, buy that skill. But you're buying it 2-to-1.
Yeah.
Right. So there's no way you're going to be as good as the rogue who bought it at 1-to-1. Which, you know what, I'm okay with that. I'm fine with that. But if the difficulty, if the DC, the difficulty class of that puzzle or whatever, is set at the level that the DMG says that it's supposed to be set at, then your fighter, who might be the only one who decided he was going to, do that, and you guys don't have a rogue in the party, because that could happen, suddenly, like, y'all are stuck at the front of the dungeon.
Yep.
Unless the GM was like, oh, no, I need to look at what my players have, and I'm gonna drop it down.
Yeah, and the argument certainly could be
Yeah.
made that a good dungeon master was going to be like, okay, well, for my party, I'm going to find a way to wiggle on that and deal with that.
Right.
Yes, all of that's true, but it still means that, to me, that indicates there's a flaw in the way the mechanic works.
Right.
Like, to me, that's a problem, and to a lot of players and to a lot of Wizards' own game designers, they looked at it and went, yeah, we got to figure out a way to fix this.
Yes.
So that was number one. We got to figure out a way to fix skills so they're not just proficiencies with makeup. Number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, because of the granularity of it, when you got to higher levels, combat became an absolute slog. Like, you could have a group of people who were competent with the rules set, understood about, okay, look, you get one move, you get one attack, you get one other action, and under these circumstances, you get attacks of opportunity, and you can do this other thing. The way actions worked in 3.5, if everybody knew how their actions worked and everybody, knew kind of what they were supposed to do, that sped things up an awful lot. But combat still became a slog because you still had to keep track of actions. You still had to keep track of a whole raft of modifiers, and God help you if you had multiple characters in the party who were casting buffs or debuffs.
Right.
As Bless or Bardic Song or any of that kind of stuff. Like in the most recent 3.5 campaign I played in, our Bard consistently for 3 years continually had to keep reminding people, remember, plus 2.
Right.
Because somebody would roll and be like, oh, I got, and have to look all over the character sheet to find all the modifiers. And remember that, oh, right, in this circumstance, we've got these bonuses. And then on top of that, oh, yeah, the Bard is doing his thing. So I get, this. So keeping track of all those modifiers was a pain in the neck. And then on top of that, if you wanted to make your character special, you would wind up buying a whole bunch of feats.
Right.
And feat interactions, like somebody with a pharmacy degree would find it difficult to keep track of the interactions between different feats.
I dare say, though, that the feat aspect of it is also a response to MMORPGs on some levels. Because it's skill trees. It's 100% skill trees.
Oh, yeah. No, 110%. Yeah, you're totally right. Is okay, when you take this skill or this feat at 4th level, that unlocks this, that, and the other thing. And yeah, no, that's definitely it. And the thing is, if it's your character, you know what your one trick is, and I'm gonna kind of get into this in a second. But the problem is you and your DM
Mm-hmm.
need to know how your feats are going to interact with the feats of any NPCs or any of the special abilities of monsters that show up.
Because it all stacks
Because everything
unevenly.
stacks. Yeah, because everything stacks with everything else. And it's going to turn into, well, hold on, let me go check the Splat book where I got this from.
Right.
And, is how is this phrased so that we can interpret in what order we apply these rules,
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we had so many occasions in the longest 3.5 campaign that I was in. We had so many occasions on which
It was only one. It was only one adventure session, but it lasted 3 years because of all the rules. Because somebody wanted to grapple.
Yeah. Sometimes it felt like it.
Yeah.
Not gonna lie, but I mean, I love the people I played with, but like there were a couple of times we got into combats that I was just like, oh dear God Almighty. And I have to talk about this in this context. Feet bloat. Book bloat was a huge thing. I talked about this a little bit. I think last episode was like, my very, very good, one of my best friends, college roommate, guy, I think of as one of my brothers. He came up with an amazing concept for a character. He had a half-orc barbarian and he used a spiked chain. Okay. And without getting too tedious about it, his whole shtick was built around the idea that I have all the attacks, and then I get attacks of opportunity on top of those, and I can trip you and then attack you again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it was
now,
okay. So you try to get away from me.
Give that guy an enlarging potion. And you have the guy who was on our side when I couldn't open a goddamn door.
Nice.
At least he was on our side.
Yeah, well, yeah, could have been a lot worse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so his whole, like, at third or fourth level, he was absolutely a goddamn murder bot.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was absolutely ridiculous. Because it was, okay, this guy tries to get away from me, trip him, and because now he's prone, I get a free attack. Whack! Okay, well, now he tries to get up again. Oh, hey, look, I get another attack of opportunity.
Right.
Whack! And every time he was hitting, he was doing like D4 plus 1 plus his strength bonus.
Yeah.
And he had, like, so his strength bonus was the biggest portion of his damage, but I mean, it was ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a one-trick pony kind of situation, but that pony was like bred with a Clydesdale on steroids. and the problem was, in order to have all of his rules handy, he had to have a half dozen supplement books on hand with sticky notes on multiple pages all the time. And we regularly wound up running into situations where some circumstance meant he had to actually look up the precise wording because, okay, well, in what order does this happen?
Right.
And there were just so many sticky notes, and this wasn't some quirk with him. This became a known issue in the game. And then this was just a pet peeve of mine as the campaign went on. In first and second edition, if you didn't have a magic weapon, there were certain monsters you just couldn't affect, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A lot of kinds of undead, some like demons. You needed to have a +1 or +2 kind of weapon.
Now, some of that goes back to second ed, like you said, though.
Yeah. But here's the thing. In third edition, they said, you know what? We don't want to create a situation where you can't do anything.
Right. If you don't have a +1 sword, you cannot hurt a vampire at all.
Yeah. So we're gonna get rid of that. And it was like, okay, all right, I applaud this decision. This makes sense. So instead, we're gonna give him damage resistance. We're gonna introduce damage resistance, which is okay. So this monster has DR 5.
Yeah. So the first 5 points you hit him with don't count.
They ignore.
Yeah.
But you never do less than 1 hit point of damage.
Right.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, okay, that's great. Right up until you have a 15th level barbarian character whose whole shtick is built around a whole lot of little attacks with a weapon that only does a D4 plus 1. And so he went from being a complete murder bot to being a mosquito.
Yeah, I could see that.
Because of that one issue. And of course the DM wound up, finding a way around that by, buffing all of our equipment in a way that made that doable. But it wound up requiring a workaround, and it's like I don't know, I don't like that.
Yeah, I shouldn't have to use the rules to get around the rules so that I can.
Yeah, and it played into what game designers even had a term for, which was the Christmas tree effect, which was based on the rate at which most adventurers get magic items, the stats of monsters have been built around that set of assumptions. So as a DM, the cruelest thing you can do to your characters is take away their shit.
Oh yeah.
Because the moment you take away their magic weapons, all of a sudden the bad guys get so much worse.
See, this is why I liked being a monk. You take away my weapons, it's like, oh no, I have to use my fists to open that door. Yeah.
You're still bitter, I know.
I've sworn. Have I told you I've sworn off monks now?
Really?
Yeah. So I told my daughter, I was like, I designed a monk for the game that I'm currently playing, and I showed it to her, and she's like, "Oh, this is really cool." He was a drow monk. I had a really cool backstory, and it was really neat. And I mean, the town that they live in is near this Underdark area, so the whole town's economy is based on essentially extraction economy under a mountain, and he's part of the city guard. So he goes down there. He's got the kick-ass long dark vision and all this, and while he does have a uniform weapon with him, he much prefers to be very chill. Let's just get out of here. Let's just run. But if we need to, we will fight, and I will, I'll punch and then leave. Yeah. And then, I'm like, okay, I got this character. And the party is like, okay, cool. And then I'm like, wait, there's no frontline fighters here.
Oh, no.
And you and I were in a TPK where.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm just like, fine. I'm a barbarian.
No.
I will be the fucking frontline fighter. I will be a barbarian. And I like my barbarian. Don't get me wrong. But I had, and I ported over a lot of the story, and then I just added a few things here and there and tweaked them. But I was like, I can never successfully play a monk in any game that I've ever played. I'm done trying. I give. I clearly don't get to play a monk in this lifetime.
You know what?
Fine.
Okay, no. Because here's the deal. You the one occasion on which I have seen you play a monk who didn't get stuck just opening doors. It did end, of course, in the TPK you mentioned.
Yes. So I've still not successfully played a monk.
Yeah, but hold on. Let me get a little further here. When the plague has been cleared from the land eventually, in the crater pocked hellscape that remains, we'll have to get together, and I will have to find a way to try to run a game.
Okay.
With you and friend of the game Tessa, friend of the show Tessa, and
producer George. Yeah.
And we might have to get friend of the show Bishop involved.
Sure.
If we can find a way to work around the time difference. But anyway, when we do that, I really genuinely want you to play a monk, because the most I have seen you come out in a character I have seen you play.
Yeah.
Was then, and yeah, no.
Yeah, it would be nice.
We gotta find a way to make that happen for you, because clearly it's a frustrated life goal of yours, and I want to, as your friend, I want to try to help you achieve that.
I appreciate that.
So, but back to the problems with 3.5 though. So you had to keep track of all of these modifiers. You had to keep track of all of these feats. And every time they put out a new supplement, it was like, well, we got to come up with some new feats to put in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Like selling point is going to be like one of the selling points is, oh hey, we got 24 new feats. And like after a while, if you started looking at them, you're like, okay, well, this feat is just this other feat with a different name and like a very slightly different set of circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could turn these into one feat, and
Right. You could make this an update of the feat.
Yeah.
And we'd be good.
Yeah. So I mean, there was that, and you know, and it was all like there were environment books for playing seagoing adventures, for adventures in the desert, adventures in the Arctic. They published whole supplements built around classes, and obviously around settings, because that's always been a big part of what gets written.
Oh yeah.
And then around organizations within settings.
Yep.
And I mean, okay, that's great. Publish, put out all this information for these settings, put out all this optional information for folks. That's great. But every one of these books included, like I just said, new feeds and new prestige classes.
That's true.
And so, like, if you were running a game, you would have to house rule that, like, okay, look, these are the books I'm allowing.
Yeah, this is a game based on, like, here's the canon for the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, this is it. This is what we're doing. And they're so back when it was first edition and to a certain extent into second edition, most of the stuff that got published by TSR on a monthly basis were modules.
Yes.
We got a bunch. We got a writer who got together, who came up with an idea for an adventure. Here is the adventure. Here are the maps. Here are the encounters. Here's the script. Here you go.
Right.
And that was most of the publishing that they did. They, with Dragonlance, they started getting into publishing books and novels and doing fiction, and they got into, other stuff. But generally speaking, what they were cranking out every month was modules. In 3.5, it felt to me like that changed to every other month we're putting out a new, very skinny hardcover book. And if we're not putting out another hardcover book, we're putting out 2 softcover ones.
And I often wondered if that was
all supplemental rules.
Yeah, I wondered if that was the Doritos effect. You know how, like, if you're going to sell Doritos, you have to sell all the brands of Doritos, which means they take up a shit ton of shelf space. And it's not even that they actually think that boiled egg flavored Doritos is going to sell, but they do know that boiled egg flavored Doritos takes up this much space. And now that's one fewer spot that Funyuns can put their shit up.
I hadn't thought of that, but I don't think so.
Okay.
Because before the shift to 4th edition, when we're still talking about 3.5 being what was on the shelves, Dungeons and Dragons, despite all of the other games that had followed in its wake, the World of Darkness series, Traveler, all the plethora of science fiction games, all of the other fantasy games that came out, all of them were kind of also rans on the shelf.
Okay.
You already had D&D taking up most of the shelf space, a lot of the air in the room, as it were. And I don't think, I mean, I don't know. I could be I wasn't in, Wizards marketing meetings, so I mean, I don't know.
Right.
But I don't think it was an attempt to crowd the shelf consciously.
Okay.
Especially after they put out the open the OGL.
Right. The open gaming license.
Yeah. When they put out the OGL, I think they really were like, no, seriously. I think what it was, and actually this just occurred to me now that you've brought that up. I think what it was they figured, okay, look, we will leave the $8.99 module stuff to people who are operating under the open gaming license. They can do that stuff. We're going to do the prestige stuff with the fancy hardcover books, and we're going to do the stuff that you're paying $30 for another book for.
Right.
and that's going to be a higher price point. That'll be, higher, profit margin on each item.
Mm-hmm.
I think from a marketing standpoint, it's more of that. And that I come to that conclusion because of the OGL and because of what I remember seeing on the shelves from the independent, non-Wizards publishers doing stuff. So I mean that's my sense of it. As to why they did that.
Okay.
And so, I mean, by the time the campaign that I'm talking about ended, my friend was carrying literally 2 backpacks full of hardbound books.
Right.
In order to cover all of the rules that his character and his wife's character needed in order to pull off their trickery. And so, there were by 2007, there were these really well-known, well-documented, to borrow a term from electronic gaming and programming. These are very well-documented bugs in the system. And so in 2007, Wizards of the Coast announced that they were working on 4th edition. And around the same time, Wizards broke off their contract with a subcontractor. They had sold, essentially, or leased Dragon Magazine out to a subcontractor, another publishing company called Paizo Publishing. And sometime in either 2005 or 2006, they broke off their licensing deal with Paizo, and they said we're gonna take Dragon Magazine digital. We're gonna stop printing it completely. We're gonna put it online.
Right.
And so Paizo turned around and said, okay, well, under the Open Gaming License, we're going to put out some of those modules that you guys aren't writing. So we're gonna come up with our own setting, and we're gonna do this whole series of modules built in our own world, and we're gonna call it the Pathfinder series.
Yeah, I remember this one because this is when I was going to cons.
Yeah. And so Paizo started releasing the Pathfinder Adventure Paths. And then in 2007, they got wind of what Wizards was looking at doing with the new edition of Dungeons & Dragons. And they said, you know what? We've gotten in the groove with what we've been doing with the 3.5 rule set. So we're going to take this in a completely different direction. And they took 3.5 and did a couple of things to try to fix the major known bugs in the system. And they wound up releasing Pathfinder under the Open Gaming License in, I want to say it was in late 2007. I actually got a set of the preview rules for, I don't know, $20. And it again, it was basically 3.5 with a couple of tweaks. And they introduced some new classes. They wound up having to rename a whole bunch of monsters. When they published new supplements, they had to rename a bunch of stuff. They didn't have beholders in Pathfinder because the copyright for that concept was not something they could do something with under the OGL for whatever bizarre reason.
Okay.
And so Pathfinder became the system that folks wound up sticking with when 4th edition came out. Because there were a whole bunch of people. There were a whole bunch of people who had the reaction to 4th edition that your DM had to 3rd. This isn't D&D anymore. And so now I gotta explain kind of what the changes were. So 4th edition, the fact it was being worked on got announced in 2007. And Wizards published 2 preview volumes over the course of 2007, Races and Classes and Worlds and Monsters. And it had a bunch of artwork that wound up much of which wound up being in the player's handbook and the DMG and monster manual. And it gave everybody a preview of what the thinking was about how the new game was going to work and how it was going to be different and why they felt it was a new direction to go in, why they felt it was the thing to do. I have both volumes. I was cleaning off one of my bookshelves earlier today, and I found my copy of Races and Classes. And I read it, and back when it came out, I bought it as soon as it was available because, oh my God, new edition D&D, I got to find out what they're doing. And I remember reading it going, okay, you know what? I really like everything they're saying here. One of the things they said was, just like in third edition, there's no reason why a dwarf can't be a wizard. And so, they basically said we're going to stick with the third edition idea that there are no limitations on what races can be what classes. We're not going to have level limitations for different races and different stuff. And they introduced the concepts that they were working on with the way character abilities were going to work. And it left me being really happy and really excited. I was really looking forward to seeing this in print and what is this like? But there were a whole bunch of people my age and a little bit older who threw a massive rage fest.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, so was this the system where you had abilities that you could use once per day, once per session, once per round kind of thing?
Yes.
Okay.
So the way it worked was we'll go into the mechanics now and then get into the Rage Fest in a minute.
Yeah.
The biggest changes mechanically were first off exactly what you just said. So when you created your character at first level, for example, if you decided you were going to be a wizard at level, you got to choose 2 at-will powers. Okay, and those would represent spells that were essentially like cantrips. Okay, so you had 2 spells that you could use however many times you needed to. Magic Missile was one of them. Magic Missile went from being and I'm a first level caster, I have cast my Magic Missile and I am spent.
Right.
And that ended right there, and it turned into I can cast Magic Missile however many times I need to. Like that is my utility go-to.
That is my cantrip.
That is my cantrip. Number 1. Then you had encounter spells. So once per encounter, as a first level wizard, you could, I'm trying to think what an encounter spell was at first level. Or actually, no, I think Magic Missile might have been an encounter spell.
Okay.
And Burning Hands was one of the at-wills.
Okay.
Or vice versa.
Sure.
And then at first level, you'd have one ability that was once per day. So you get this one really big spell you can use. And then when you cast that, you've got to, make camp and rest, and you get it back the following day.
Kind of starting the idea of short and long rests too.
Yes. Yes. So number 1, you had at will, encounter, and daily powers. So like one of the characters I wound up creating, the group that had the really long running 3.5 campaign, we shifted over to 4th because the original 3.5 campaign had run its course. We wound up, becoming, huge heroes to the people of the continent of Corvair. And I wound up writing an epilogue to the whole campaign that I'm still actually kind of proud of. And so we retired those characters and we started a whole new campaign in 4th. And the first DM said, I don't want to run anymore. And his brother said, that's fine, I want to. And so he took over as DM.
Cool.
And we moved over to 4th edition, and I actually had the chance to create a spell blade, and I was so excited because he was a fighter wizard who was actually like a fighter wizard. Like all of his magical abilities were like I have the ability to do stuff in combat magically, but I still act a lot like a fighter. And it wasn't like, okay, well, I can shoot my bow and I can use my sword and then I can throw a fireball.
Mm-hmm.
No, it was the magic I do is my sword lights up with lampant green flame, and when it does that, I can do this kind of cool shit with it.
Right.
I can use my magic to dimension door halfway across the battlefield. I can call my sword to my hand from however far away it is. It was like it was its own thing, and it was just so amazing. It was awesome.
Cool.
And I was just so excited by it. And we started playing it, and there was a learning curve,
Mm-hmm.
and a bunch of people in the group got frustrated with the learning curve because there were people in the group who just had not been role playing as long. We had some people who'd been role playing for forever, and we had a few people who'd been basically role playing since the beginning of our first campaign.
Right.
And so, there was a certain amount of frustration for those folks that was just related to, I learned how to do all this stuff. Now I got to learn how to do it differently again.
Mm-hmm.
But there was also a lot of simplification in the way a lot of stuff in the game worked. Skills got changed dramatically. DCs were lowered very, very dramatically. Saving throws, the way saving throws worked, got changed. In 4th edition, it wound up looking an awful lot more like what we see in 5th today.
Right.
And it was this major sea change in the way of in the way that a lot of mechanics worked. And it was very intentionally a very major change. And so there were a whole bunch of people who were really angry because this was, if they wanted to continue with a rule set that was going to be supported,
Mm-hmm.
if you were going to see new stuff being put out, you needed to switch over to 4th because
Right.
3rd edition, Wizards isn't going to be publishing any more 3rd edition stuff anymore.
It's what they call a dead brand.
Yes, basically.
Yeah.
So a lot of people had spent a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
My buddy that I mentioned before, being like near the top of that list, had spent a lot of money on 3rd. And so now, okay, I gotta go buy a whole new set of rule books. I gotta go, and there's a learning curve, and that's frustrating.
Sure.
And then on top of that, there was this very intentional move to emphasize encounters that were not combat.
Now, real quick, I want to just back up
Okay.
a little bit. So your friend who spent a lot of money on the 3.5 books. I mean, again, you can see behind me in my office, there's an entire bookshelf, and it is literally double stacked of Star Wars books that are now called Legends. Now,
Yes.
none of these are actually called Legends because I bought them. I mean, like the pages are yellow on the outside, like they're old, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how to put this? This was created, or this was made by Fiat to be not canon anymore.
Yes.
They never stripped the knowledge from my brain. They never came to my house and burned my books. Did they start a whole new series of books? Yes. And you know what? I've elected not to get into those because of people's review of the new canon. Not because I'm loyal to the old canon or anything like that. Just I'm too old to like get into something that somebody has told me is flimsy at best. And I'm like, well, I've already read through some really flimsy at best books in there. I don't want to start over and read another version of Planet of Twilight and have it suck that bad again. So it's what I don't get is that your friend who had all these books for 3.5 couldn't still play them. It's not like you said, there was book bloat. It's not like he couldn't choose, you know what, we're going to do a Tundra adventure, so only these books count. Or you know what, we're going to, like, there's still so many ways to fuck that pig. Like it's crazy to me that you're like upset that somebody brought a llama to the orgy now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Thank you for that mental.
Sure.
And the thing is, I've thought about this.
Mhm.
I have genuinely thought about this because what you're saying is 100% correct. And I think what it comes down to, I think the emotional reaction, and I also want to note that my buddy who had spent all of this money on 3.5 and still has this literal library of
A
3.5
trove of 3.5.
resource books. Yeah, like oh my God, someday some hobby historian is going to find his collection and be like, holy shit, we hit the mother lode. We know everything we could ever hope to learn about this one system. My God, I can write my dissertation. Like, but seriously, it was that level of collection he had, still has, as far as I know.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, he was like, I mean, there was a little bit of, well, I don't know about a new system, but okay. And he is one of those personalities who he immediately went through it. And the joke we made in the group was, Nick is about to figure out how to break the world. Like he was that guy. He has remained that guy. And so he immediately went into the 4th edition books and like read through them with gusto and picked them up as they came out, because he's also a collector at heart. And he was not one of these revanchists. He was not one of these dead enders.
Mm-hmm.
He was maybe not an eager adopter, not an early adopter like me, but he was an adopter, and he saw it and was like, okay, well, if this is what everybody in the group wants to do, then okay, cool, we'll do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for a lot of the folks who got really angry and are still really angry, earlier this week, I think I shared with you and some of our friends in a Facebook conversation that we're in Messenger.
Mm-hmm.
I think I remember, at least I remember thinking, I've got to share this with these guys. But in a D&D group on Facebook, there was a conversation actually about recent developments within D&D that was just so indicative of the toxic levels of, well, this is my game and you're ruining my game kind of outlook.
Mm-hmm.
And, back to your original point at the beginning of all this. First of all, this is happening in 2007, 2008, which is, Barack Obama is running for president the second time.
No, he's running the first time.
First time. Okay, yeah, it is. You're right.
Yeah.
Never mind. My bad. No, wait.
2008. He's running for the first time.
Yeah. No, you're right. Sorry, I blew the math there. 08 and then 12.
Yeah.
So he's running for president the first time, and we start seeing the beginnings of a backlash in the culture wars, where we'd been moving forward as a society, whether we had, politically or legislatively, as a society. We've talked about this previously. LGBTQ acceptance had become basically pretty mainstream.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you distinguish between legislatively, because
Oh,
there are people in power are reacting against the culture as it's marching forward.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, pretty much. But they are reacting that way in reflection of, I think, something that was also going on at the ground level amongst people who were starting to feel insecure. So, and I'm not talking about economic insecurity. Don't at me with that. No, I'm talking about, people who
culturally.
were seeing culturally feeling insecure.
Mm-hmm.
It's around 2008 that I remember first seeing. Actually, it would have been a bit later than that because I didn't get on Facebook until 2009.
Mm-hmm.
But it was around the same time that I started getting emails and seeing stuff from members of my extended family and from my dad that were like these dire warnings about oh God, the word just completely went away from me. Population figures.
Demographics.
Demographics, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
There were dire warnings about worldwide demographics, and the population of the Islamic world is expanding way faster than that of the Western democratic
Right.
world.
Yeah.
And all of this kind of like the subtext of it being you as a white dude, straight white dude, really need to be worried.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember kind of looking at that like, do I? Like, I'm not seeing this.
It felt to me at that time, by the way, like white dudes who were used to being in power felt that there was, okay, so in wrestling, if you hit a guy too hard, here we're an hour into it and I finally referenced wrestling. But if you hit a guy too hard in wrestling, it's choreographed combat that's meant to look real. But in wrestling, if you hit a guy too hard, and it's called giving him a potato, you potatoed him. Okay. If he takes issue with that, he hits you back just as hard, if not harder. He gives you a potato, but that's called getting a receipt. And sometimes you'll hit a guy too hard and you're like, oh shit, I got a receipt coming. And it might not happen during that match. It might happen. And it's just a way of kind of like keeping people from being too zealous and like, hey, work this. Okay. Don't shoot this, It felt culturally like white dudes absolutely felt like they had a receipt coming and they were trying to guard against it or trying to dictate the when and the how. So there was this, because I remember the demographic stuff. I remember a lot of that. And it was at a time of economic, the supports of the Jenga tower were falling.
It's the Great Recession.
Yes. So right. I do think that you have a layer of that as well, but also, we kind of fucked this up culturally. We've been running willy-nilly for a very long time. 8 years of Bush. We've been bombing brown people as much as we want. Yeah. There's like a fear that the receipt is coming.
I think you're giving the people who were feeling this insecurity. I think you're giving them too much credit for awareness.
Okay.
I think the issue was for all of our childhood.
Mm-hmm.
If you looked at main characters on the covers of fantasy novels, they were muscular white guys with lissom half-naked women hanging off their legs, or they were surrounded by a bunch of bestial monsters who,
right.
If you wanted to code them somehow racially, you totally could.
Mm-hmm.
And now all of a sudden, in the 3rd edition rule books, they're starting to see people who don't look like them as the heroes.
Mm-hmm.
They're starting to see more and more women showing up in the artwork and in the rules, and like the pronouns in the 3.5 rule book were explicitly, and they stated at the beginning of the book. I remember reading it going, oh, okay, that's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Was we're going to alternate between he and she.
Yeah.
And so they saw that, and it was, and that was something that, got some grumbling from, guys our age about like, why, come on, just like, the default in the language is he.
Mm-hmm.
Why you gotta be a social justice warrior about this stuff?
She just costs so much more ink. He is one letter smaller. That's why we do it. It's economic.
Like, here you go. It's economical. No, it's not. But anyway, so and then in the genre,
mm-hmm.
in this time, you're starting to see more representation. You're starting to see people who aren't white showing up, in roles. Not to the extent we're seeing representation now, which is a lot better, but still, it was becoming a thing. It was becoming a thing
Mm-hmm.
that was consciously being done, and I think that was just by itself
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable. I don't necessarily want to go so far as to say threatening, but I think it was uncomfortable because the more of those kinds of faces you see in the artwork, the fewer of the old kinds of faces you see in the artwork, because the space in a book is limited.
Right.
And as much as we want to argue that, giving other people more rights doesn't take away rights from you, it's not pie.
Right. Space in a book is literally pie. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
You're seeing a smaller and smaller share of that set of imagery looking like you anymore, and that, to somebody who grew up just assuming that was what they were going to see all the time, when you grow up in an unequal situation, at the top of it, equality looks like a threat.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there's some of that. And then in fourth, there are all of these things changing, and the way the rules worked, it wasn't as heavily focused on killing monsters and taking their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The narrative was very consciously changed for non-human races and for monstrous races to not necessarily be automatically evil.
Mm-hmm.
There was some debate because half-orcs were not originally. Half-orcs didn't show up in the first player's handbook for 4th edition. Fourth edition, instead of having a player's handbook, 4th edition was done in a way that, okay, we've got the volume 1 of the player's handbook, we've got volume 2 of the player's handbook, we've got volume 3, and initially I think the plan was they were going to have volume 4, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So like as they came up with new ways to drive characters, they were going to release new player's handbooks that were thematically, centered around that.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, for example, the monk as a class didn't show up in the first player's handbook because the characters in the first volume of the PHB were martial heroes whose powers were rooted in I'm a fighter, or I'm a warlord, or I'm a rogue, or divine heroes who were empowered by a deity, or arcane heroes who were empowered by arcane magic.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had, the basic races: humans, elves, half-elves, halflings, dwarves. And then in the second volume of the Player's Handbook, they introduced some additional arcane heroes. So like the Spellblade that I talked about was in the second Player's Handbook. And primal heroes. So druids, barbarians, and another class called wardens showed up in that volume, and they also broke up. I'm kind of getting off the track, but I'll come back to what I was talking about. But it's important to kind of note, because it's a philosophical change that I thought was really kind of cool, but a lot of players were really angry about. Was they explicitly said, you know what, we've looked at the way different classes are supposed to behave in combat when you're fighting monsters. The wizard is the guy who stands back and throws fireballs and affects a big area, and casts spells like Cloud Kill, which keeps monsters out of a certain area, or puts up walls. So a wizard is a controller, and so a controller works to try to keep people penned in, but they're an arcane controller. Okay, their power comes from magic. A fighter, the party's fighter, is a martial controller. Their job is to get up front, and they're sticky. So like, I am fighting you. If you try to get away from me, I'm going to beat you up.
Right.
I'm gonna keep you away from the squishier members of my party. Meanwhile, the rogue and the ranger are strikers. I'm going to run up and I'm going to do a shit ton of damage, and then I'm going to try to get away. Okay.
Right.
And this makes perfect sense. So you can, and then the really, to me, brilliant thing about this idea is, well, okay, so okay, we have a controller. What if we have a controller whose powers come from a psychic source?
Okay.
And they came up in the third player's handbook. They had a psychic controller. They had a psychic striker, which, by the way, was a monk. and they had, a psychic leader. The other character type was leader. Clerics, bards, and artificers, for example, were all leaders. They're the ones who buff the party, debuff opponents, and heal.
Okay.
And so one of the classes I really liked out of 4th edition was the Warlord, who was a leader, so did the job of a cleric, but did it as a martial character.
Okay.
So instead of divinely powered, they were basically like a fighter who was an officer who was like, you get over there.
Right.
And their abilities were, I get to make an attack against this enemy. And in the process of making an attack against this enemy, I can also give my buddy a free 5-foot move for them to get into a position to hit somebody.
Nice.
And that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I philosophically, I was like, this is amazing. These ideas are great. But very pointedly, a whole lot of older gamers, my age, your age, and older than us, looked at this and went, you're trying to turn D&D into World of Warcraft. Because that's exactly how classes break down in WoW.
I remember this. I remember speaking to the owner of an FLGS and friendly local gaming store, and he said, this isn't D&D, this is Warcraft, and it's because too many people are staying home playing Warcraft, and this is D&D's attempt to get them back. So it's selling its essence, essentially, to no redundancy intended there, but it's selling its essence essentially in order to get the market share back.
Yeah.
And
and I think that answer is kind of half right. I think they looked at the way MMOs had developed, and they looked at the way those mechanics worked, and they said, you know what, how can we take what they've done and use that on the tabletop? Partly because all of those were planned from the ground up. AD&D was basically an organic construct. Like, okay, we need if you want to play your character who hits people over the head with a sharp object, okay, you got a fighter. Okay, you're going to need a healer. So, okay, we got clerics. Okay,
right.
People want to play wizards. So, okay, here's wizards. You can throw fireballs. You can do crazy shit like that. Okay. You want to be sneaky. Okay, here's a thief. Like, and it wound up organically developing into what MMO designers looked at and went, okay, no, we're going to take this and we're actually going to make this a design feature. Like we're going to have the DPS characters, and we're actually going to build the DPS characters to be good at behaving this particular way in game. And then, so 4th edition is those ideas then coming back around onto the tabletop. And I mean, I'm giving the designers at WotC, credit at their word for kind of what they were saying at the time.
Sure.
Because I don't think I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't think they really had reason to lie about it. And so so that's I think where those ideas were rooted, and I think the comparison is important, because the other thing is, it wasn't to bring people back. I think it was, there's a new generation of people who've been introduced to the idea of getting together with a group of people and going and raiding a dungeon. They've been doing it online. Hey,
right,
let's encourage them to get together in person and do it this way.
Right.
So it wasn't that we've had a bunch of people leave and go to MMOs. It was, there's a new generation of players that we could be reaching out to
Yeah.
And one of the problems with 3.5 by the end of it, by 2007, 3.5 was really, really daunting for a new player to get into.
Yeah, because I mean, you had essentially a culture of people who'd grown up with A1, 2, A2, 3, 3.5. So you've got a lot of gatekeepers.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and you've got the intimidation factor on top of that of like, I remember I was playing with a group and we booted the guy after the first game because it was just obnoxious. He was trying to win at D&D. And he's like, okay, well, I'll play a cleric. We're like, cool, we could use a cleric. And so, or no, he played a wizard, sorry. And we already had a couple, I think we had a sorcerer and some other magic user. And he's like, okay, well, I'm going to make my familiar a toad. It's like, all right, cool. And he's like, okay. And then I'm going to stay up all night. And like, he just was like trying to rules lawyer his way into having made cool shit to win the next combat and on and on and on. Like, and there was like no role playing. There was no nothing. And it's like, oh, bud, you're playing the wrong game then. I'm sorry. You're not going to fit with us.
You're with the wrong group of players here. Yeah.
And so it was the opposite of, gatekeeping. In many ways, we like showed him back to the gate, but it's like, you're trying to win. You might enjoy another table over there somewhere. Like we're here to, play and have a good time. But 3.5 was, I think in many ways, the final edition where that was an encouraged behavior. And, because when you get to 4 in Pathfinder, you get to them, and by encouraged behavior, I mean encouraged by the designers.
By the nature of the system.
Yes. Where like the designers, that was in the air that they breathed. Whereas when you get to 4, it's how do we get people to play, not how do we get people to find a new strategy to win.
Yes.
And
so I think that's and that philosophical change, I think was, I don't want to, a lot of people reacted as though it was hurtful to them.
Mm-hmm.
that was changing. And I think a big part of it is a demographic issue. I think a lot of 30-plus-year-old guys who had grown up playing first through 3.5 looked at what was going on with this and felt like this is not being made for me. This is for people 10 years younger than me. This is for millennials. This is for millennials and Zoomers.
Before they had names,
before they had names. This is for Gen Y and Gen Z, not me, Gen Xer, or my older brother, late boomer. And I think there for some of these people, there are still, like, you see and hear them talking in ways online, like there was a very deep level of personal betrayal they felt with this shift. And I mean, some of these people are my dear friends, and I hesitate to be too judgmental about it, but I mean, I've gotten into arguments with a couple of them where, dude, you're just wrong. Like,
right. Yeah.
And I know, feel free. I'm at Blaylock on Twitter. Please at me. Like, I will happily wade into that discussion one more time. Because look, I'm not trying to say you're wrong for preferring an edition, but I am going to say you're wrong for calling 4th edition cancer.
Yeah.
Like somebody just this last week in a D&D group, somebody said, I like 4th edition, and got this, and this guy had this like immediate, like you could see that just reading that somebody said they liked it had like touched him in the bad place.
Right.
And this guy came back with this response that was like, oh yeah, well, you're just basically saying that you like cancer. And like, why do you have to be like that?
Wow.
Like, how badly were you hurt by this?
Yeah. Like how much stake can there be in a game system?
Like I mean, don't get me wrong, when I ran up against the limitations of 4th edition, I was really disappointed, and there were some things in 4th that I looked at and went like, well, that's pretty clunky and I don't know about that. But I never had I didn't let it be like an attack against me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, somebody else saying I prefer chocolate doesn't mean if you like vanilla you suck.
Right. It's so funny because when people say, like, when I get responses like that of people just like, how could you like that? I'm like, I like broccoli too. Like, that's usually my default answer. It's like, people do this with music with me all the time, and I couldn't give a shit less about music. Like, oh, you like that stuff? I don't. And that's the end of the conversation for me. It's barely the beginning of the conversation for me that I like any music. But people are like, oh, God, I can never get into that. Oh, okay, well, I like broccoli.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what? Yeah. And again, I think the deal is there is this mindset.
Mm-hmm.
I think within the milieu of these games,
Mm-hmm.
being attached to a system for people who have spent 30 years playing a game,
Mm-hmm.
the way that game works can become something they identify with very strongly.
Yes. Well,
and I don't think it's entirely right, but I think I can kind of understand where the attachment and identification can lead to somebody feeling like they've been slighted when somebody suggests something needs to be changed.
yeah, I mean, I think that there is a similar reaction when somebody suggests universal health care. Like, and I'm not actually joking at this, because the people who typically object to it are people who have spent a long time paying for the Cadillac plan, as it were. The result is they get mad at the idea that the rules that they have played by are no longer valid. Yeah, I'm getting the finger point and the point to the nose.
I'm touching my nose and pointing at him.
Yeah. But I think, and literally in a game system, I have learned and internalized these rules. I have built a character or characters with whom I have a deep emotional attachment by virtue of the fact that I've played that character for quite some time and developed them for quite some time. I mean, we have friends who are authors and they get attached to their characters. And you add to that the overlay of the rules system, and then you have, like, I get where the anger is coming from. I don't agree with it. I think that, it's time to do some reflecting. But you ultimately
let's
have
think about our life choices, shall
yeah,
we?
like
Take
let's
a look in the mirror for just a minute.
yeah, let's see why we're so bothered by the fact. But it is, I have learned these rules, and now you're telling me these rules don't count toward my continued success. And my rejoinder to that is always, well, you could still play this system. And that's the kicker.
Yeah. And there's more I want to say on that, but I know we've gone over an hour at this point.
Oh yeah. So.
Well over. And so I think I can pick up with what I want to say in our next episode.
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of round this out by then going from 4th into 5th.
Mm-hmm.
And then into, like, the most recent developments within fandom, which I think are gonna reflect some things back on why third into fourth was such a big deal.
Okay.
So, based on all of this, what are you taking away at this point in our conversation?
Well, I think the comparison to universal healthcare, quite honestly, like you have like I think it all kind of culminated to that moment of just like here are people who have played by the rules of capitalism and now they're mad that you're trying to change them. It's because they spent all that energy. It kind of goes back to what you were talking about with the with the fighter not being able to disable a device at 12th level. Like I put all this class energy into this skill and it's still not good enough.
Yeah.
Because things have changed.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know. I mean, the aesthetic of the game, the time of the game, it is a pre-industrial. It is a clearly European, Eurocentric, wilderness, medieval fantasy model. What is that if not the appeal to tradition in the white male mentality? And so people who are attracted to this game, absolutely, I could see them being like, oh, I'm going to stick to, I could see them being dogmatic is ultimately.
Yes.
So,
yes. Okay.
Yeah, I so that's my takeaway so far is that I'm unsurprised that a whole bunch of people got their feelings hurt that the game system changed to accommodate ultimately younger players who wanted to play instead of who wanted to win. And I do think we're seeing a divide there. So,
okay, I don't entirely think you're wrong.
mm-hmm.
I think as an aggregate, I think that last part is especially on the money.
Mm-hmm.
On an individual level,
Mm-hmm.
like anything, painted with a broad brush to save time,
Yep.
as we say so often. It breaks down a little bit around the edges, but I think as a movement, as a demographic issue,
Mm-hmm.
I think you're largely on the money. I think the generalization is largely correct.
Yeah.
And I think there's some other things at work which I don't want to quite give away the store on right now. But we can get back to it. But you've started to touch on them a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to give it away yet right now.
Sure.
So
Okay.
yeah. All right.
So any books you want to recommend? What are you reading? What are you listening to? It's okay if not.
Yeah, right now I don't have a whole lot going
Okay.
on in the reading realm.
Mhm.
I've got 3 or 4 things that I've already recommended in the past that I'm trying to work on.
Mhm.
Specifically, I'm still working my way through The Flying Tigers, the story of Claire Chenault and the American Volunteer Group in China, which just keeps getting more and more Hollywood while still remaining a history book. Like John, the movie The Flying Tigers never did justice to the crazy shit that actually happened. Like,
Nice.
so yeah, that's what I've got going on. What are you reading right now? You're much more active as a reader recently than me. What do you got going on?
Only because I insist on going outside when the sun is out to read for half an hour, or actually not even half an hour, for 15 minutes every day, like on my lunch. So even when the kids are home, I feed them and then I go outside. And so I've been reading. I'm still plodding through the Star Wars books. I finally finished Star by Star by Troy Denning, and it's spoiler alert on a 20-plus-year-old book. It's the one where Anakin dies. Jason is kidnapped by the Yuuzhan Vong, and Coruscant gets taken over. Borsk Fela goes out like a fucking G, and it's really cool to see him doing that.
Good that in the end he did that, because he was such a goddamn prick.
Oh, he
up
was.
to that point.
He totally was.
Holy cow.
Yeah. And Leia gives a really good speech at the end about resist, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. I bet you if I'd read it last year, I would have been like, this is so prescient. And this year I've been dulled into being okay with just neoliberal policies because at least they're not fascist. So I need to kind of re-examine myself a little. But
A little bit of looking in the mirror.
yeah, definitely need to.
A little bit of thinking about life choices.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, or just what I'm gonna let pass and what I'm not.
Okay.
But here's what I do recommend this week. I actually have gotten the kids into playing various games, as you know.
Yes.
We played Castle Panic again last week.
Okay.
And that was a lot of fun. And I really want to play. I bought Julia 3 Dragon Ante.
Oh.
Yeah, and all 3 of us had a lot of fun playing it. And I've taught them through playing Uno to gang up on me. That they should always gang up on me. That you should never ally yourself with the most powerful person to get the next person who's as powerful as you. But you should always. Yeah. So I'm hoping through that and Castle Panic that they recognize the utility and help usefulness of a union. So.
Oh, I was going to say you were training them to be good Leninist revolutionaries, but okay.
Yeah, that too. Why not both? So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, no los dos.
Yeah. Now, you told people that they could find you on the Twitter. Is there anywhere else that they can find you?
They can find me at the same address on TikTok and on Instagram. Although on Instagram, actually look for me as Mr. Blaylock at Mr. Blaylock, Blaylock. You won't find very much there, but there will be a few very precious images of, and by precious I mean twee, images of me and my son from a while ago.
Nice.
But yeah, so that's where I can be found. And of course, the 2 of us collectively, if you want to yell at both of us over our opinions on,
broccoli,
letting go,
yeah,
broccoli, or letting go of your attachment to a particular edition of a game, you can shout at both of us at Geek History Time on Twitter.
Yeah.
And where can they find you?
Harmony, 2 H's in the middle on the Twinsta. You can also find me every Tuesday night on twitch.tv/capital puns. We run a live weekly pun show, have since the pandemic started, and prior to that it was an actual in-person one, so come check it out. I will also on March 28th be on the UK Pun Off show, which is 11 o'clock our time. It'll be 7 p.m. their time, 11 o'clock a.m. our time on the 28th. Just go on Facebook or on Twitter, look up UK Pun Show or UK Pun Off, and you'll find it. And then,
so just to be sure, when you say 7 p.m., you're talking about 1900 GMT.
Yes.
Greenwich Mean Time.
Yes.
And the 11 o'clock a.m. figure is for those of you on the west coast of North America.
Yes, PST. Good call.
Since we do have, it turns out, a global audience. Hello, New Zealand.
There you go. Yeah.
For you, I have no idea what time that's going to be. It won't even be on the same day. But,
no.
That's where he's going to be.
Yeah.
That day, that time.
And on the following day, I'll actually be on the show called Who Wrote This Shit with Chelsea Bierce. And you can just type in WWTS or Chelsea Bierce, Bearce. She's a phenomenal comedian, and she's going to have me on that show on the 29th of March at 6 p.m. PST. So,
okay, very cool.
Yeah, and that's good enough. That's where you can find me. So,
all right.
Yeah. Well, until next time, I'm Damian Harmony.
And I'm Ed Blaylock. And don't go anywhere, or we will take that attack of opportunity.